Hello bachcho, let's read the question. The question says that if alpha and beta are different complex numbers with modulus of beta equals to 1, then find find modulus of beta minus alpha upon 1 minus alpha conjugate beta. So इस क्वेश्चन में हमें अल्फा बीटा दिया है कि ये दो कोई कॉम्प्लेक्स नंबर हैं और मॉडुलस ऑफ बीटा की वैल्यू 1 है. देन हमें फाइंड आउट करना है कि मॉडुलस ऑफ बीटा माइनस अल्फा अपॉन 1 माइनस कॉन्जुगेट ऑफ अल्फा इंटू बीटा की वैल्यू क्या होगी. सो लेट्स स्टार्ट द सॉल्यूशन बाय अंडरस्टैंडिंग द की कॉन्सेप्ट. So here key concept we are using are properties of conjugate of complex number. So here suppose if we have taken a complex number z and we are multiplying that complex number with its conjugate, then that can be represented as modulus of square of that complex number. Means if we are doing the square of modulus of any complex number, then that can be represented as product of that complex number with its conjugate. So we'll use this information to find the value for given expression. So let's start the solution. In the question we are given that modulus of beta is equals to what? 1, and we have to find out beta modulus of beta minus alpha upon 1 minus alpha conjugate beta. So as we have seen, let's find out the square of that expression beta minus alpha upon 1 minus alpha conjugate beta. So if we are finding the square of the modulus of this expression, this can be represented as beta minus alpha upon 1 minus alpha conjugate beta multiplied with beta minus alpha upon 1 minus alpha conjugate beta whole conjugate. Okay, let's simplify it. So this is beta minus alpha upon 1 minus alpha conjugate beta, and when we'll find the conjugate of this, it will become beta conjugate minus alpha conjugate upon 1 minus alpha conjugate is what? Alpha and beta conjugate. Now we'll multiply these two. When we will multiply these two, we'll get here, this will become what? Beta minus alpha. We are multiplying beta minus alpha with beta conjugate minus alpha conjugate, and in the denominator we have 1 minus alpha conjugate beta, 1 minus alpha conjugate beta, and we are multiplying it with 1 minus alpha beta conjugate. Let's find out the product of these complex numbers. So when we will multiply these values, we will get here beta into beta conjugate minus beta into alpha conjugate minus alpha into beta conjugate plus alpha into alpha conjugate upon 1 minus alpha beta conjugate minus alpha conjugate beta plus alpha conjugate beta into alpha beta conjugate. Simplifying it further, just now we have seen that product of any complex number with its conjugate is equals to what? It is equal to the square of modulus of that complex number minus we get here alpha beta conjugate. If I rearrange it, we'll get alpha beta conjugate minus alpha conjugate beta plus, similarly this can be written as alpha into alpha conjugate is modulus of alpha square. Similarly in the denominator what we'll get? We'll get here 1 minus alpha beta conjugate minus alpha conjugate beta plus, I can rewrite this as alpha into alpha conjugate and beta into beta conjugate. If I rearrange these parts of these complex numbers, just now we have seen modulus of beta is what? It is equal to 1. So let's substitute this with 1. Here alpha beta conjugate minus alpha conjugate beta plus modulus of alpha square upon denominator will get 1 minus alpha beta conjugate minus alpha conjugate beta plus alpha into alpha conjugate is modulus of alpha square, beta into beta conjugate is modulus of beta square. Rearranging this numerator will get modulus of alpha square minus alpha beta conjugate minus alpha conjugate beta plus 1, and in the denominator we have 1 minus alpha beta conjugate minus alpha conjugate beta, and alpha square is there, and beta conjugate modulus of beta we have got as 1, so square of 1 is 1 only, so we have got this. Now if we compare numerator and denominator, we have same terms in the numerator and same terms in the denominator, means numerator and denominator is same, it means we can cancel them. When we will cancel them, we'll get the value as 1. So it means that modulus of beta minus alpha upon 1 minus alpha conjugate beta value is equals to what? Its value is equals to 1. I am sure everybody must have understood it well. Thank you. Best of luck.